Winter, spring, summer, fall, seasons change, we still keep it together.
Hey, Beverly Hills 90210 fans! Are you ready to dive deep, episode by episode, storyline by storyline, character by character, as we break down the making of your favorite zip code? With your hosts, Charles Rosen.
Did I say that?
Mary
This
Mullins.
thing about the real person, and we're going, what? We're getting rid of this guy.
Pete Ferrero.
I'm feeling wonderful. Kathleen looks TV crush-worthy.
Like so many special guests. And all your questions. Live on the Beverly Hills 90210 show. Oh, yeah.
Everybody dance now.
Very controversial. Everybody dance now.
Yeah, I used to sing.
Yeah.
I used to sing along to the Bee Gees. I could do it. And Frankie Lyman and in my falsetto. Michael Cudlitz, hello there.
Hey guys, how is everybody?
We're good, man. It's good to
You're on
see.
the
Good to have you here, Michael. Just to let everybody know, Michael is driving to the airport, so this is the best we can do, and we're happy to have you here and be able to hear you and to talk about this. And of course, the director David Carson is with us. We're talking about a competitive edge today. This is an episode, Chuck, that deals with steroids at West Beverly. Let's talk, Chuck. Walk me, or Grandpa Charlie. Let's walk through. And
We got our little granddaughter here today for 4 days, so that's where they thought I would change my nom de plume to.
so
Perfect.
let's start with you, Charles, and talk to me about steroids at West Beverly, and where some of this started with.
Well, we were at this point, year 2. We're still an issue-oriented show. We're not serialized yet, so we had to find issues. And Darren Starr, had more time than I did apparently, because he would go to the gym a lot, and he had said, hey, people are using steroids. Let's do that in the sports program. And so, in we looking at the competitive edge that David directed and Michael played one of the athletes. This is a very male show. This was probably the most masculine show we ever did. I mean, yes, Jenny Garth was in it as Kelly Taylor, but that was about it. It was really in the gym and the track field, and I was really, really reminded looking at the opening of that how David took us to a new dimension through his directing. We'd not used those kind of techniques before, the longer lens, the cut to one to the other, and just beyond them. I mean, I knowing what was the basis of most Aaron Spelling shows, establishing shot, long, 2-shot, overs, close up, out. This was such an exciting way to open. Just want to compliment you on that, David.
Well, thank you very much, Chuck. That's nice of you.
Yeah.
Let's talk to Michael first, because I know he's got limited time with us too.
Right.
So, Michael, did you get a chance to look back at this episode, the competitive edge?
I did not get a chance to look back at it, but it was the first episode I did on the show, I believe.
That's right.
And so I remember it quite well, because I remember I had going way back, I had a conversation with Chuck and the producers, and was basically told that they knew I was an actor, and I told this before, but they were like, it's a conflict of interest to have you on the show, so even though I know you're friends with all these guys and you're an actor, you're never going to do our show. And I said, that's fine, as long as I can go audition for my stuff and do my thing, everything's great. Well, that all changed when they got in a bind and they couldn't find big guys who looked young. So they approached me and they're like, so we know you're an actor, and we have this thing that we're having trouble casting, because we're having trouble casting big guys who actually look like they're in high school, or could look like they're in high school, or at least look the same age as our guys who are not in high school. And and we'd love to have you come in and audition us. And I said, well, what about the I thought that this wasn't a thing. And they're like, well, we could probably bend the rules. So I wound up going in. Auditioning for, I believe, one of the roles. I actually went in. They didn't know who they wanted to use me for, so I wound up auditioning for both of the lead guest roles. And as shitty as this is going to sound initially, it's actually the truth. I sort of booked both of them. I think David and Chuck had decided that I could actually play either of these roles, so they said, you're hired, but we're not going to tell you which role yet because we're having trouble finding the other role. And depending upon who we get, they may be able to do either one or the other, and that will dictate what's going to happen. And they were both, honestly, both great guest stars. And I wound up actually recommending a buddy of mine who I had just done the Colorado Shakespeare Festival with, Jim Peary.
That's right.
Who went in and auditioned, and he wound up getting the one role. And then I knew what role I was going to be cast as because Jim called me and said, oh, hey, I just booked whatever. I don't even remember the name. So I was like, oh, well, then I guess I got the other one. And that was my first time working. That was my first time working with David, who I actually worked with later on in my series Against the Grain. He directed myself and my wife, I believe.
I did.
But that's a whole other thing. How are you? How are you, my friend? I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. I'm very well. I was very, very pleased to hear you were going to be on this thing, so I could say hello to you. And congratulations on your career. You've been doing wonderfully well.
Oh,
I've kept my eye very closely on you, and you, wow, from these starts, you are really doing fantastic work. We must meet sometime.
I wrote down just a bunch of them from different times, different years. David Lascher, hello there.
Sorry, guys. Google Chrome and Macs sometimes don't get along.
Oh, we know. That's the alternate name of this podcast.
But David, I was just going to read a lot of Michael's shows that he did because certainly on television, Picket Fences, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, New York, NYPD Blue. But, also some really substantive movies in long form, Band of Brothers, A River Runs Through It, and then more recently, Walking Dead. And you were in, and just coming off of this past season, you were in something called Clarice, right?
Yes. Yeah, we were on Clarice for CBS. Hey, David, how are you?
Cudlitz, man. Nice to hear you.
Long time, buddy.
He's driving to the airport, which is why he's not visual. Hey, Michael, while I have you, I want to ask you about transitioning from what you were doing on 90210 prior to now being, were you friends with all the guys? And so it goes like, hey, this is Cudlitz. He's cool. We're hanging out with him. And now he's in a scene with us. Was it kind of like that? Or what was it like for you?
We were pretty close early on. We were very, it was kind of an anomaly, I think, especially looking back. We were a very close cast and crew. That was one of the things that I think had been fostered through the fact of, we were like treated like shit as a TV show. Traditionally for, Aaron Spelling standard, like we were out in this warehouse, and I don't mean that like as in the actual environment that we were all dealing with. I'm just talking about from the corporate standpoint of, the typical Aaron Spelling show, which is usually on a lot or a ship or the Bahamas or, tech, like all these huge shows. We were in this little shitty warehouse in Van Nuys. The little child that was thrown out there was going to do whatever 4 or 5 episodes, and then, they were going to be done with it. Which blew up into something, as big, if not bigger than anything that they ever did, and saved the network in the process. So we all bonded incredibly, and so me coming onto the show, although it was, I was friends with everybody, it was weird just because it's strange. You know, the guy who built the sets is now working with us, and he's going to stay a little late to pack everything on the truck. It's a little bit of a strange dynamic, but honestly, the crew and the cast got along phenomenally. So much so that it probably almost cost the show getting almost canceled a couple times up in Universal at the hotel. So there was a lot going on, and the crew and the cast were very close.
Very cool. Chuck, did you want to talk about?
Well, I want to go back something that Michael said about the rules. About the rules, bending the rules. I just want him to know, not my rule, never my rule. I
know. That was and exactly, and that was the I forget the term that they used, but
I don't know.
Something interests, whatever. But I said it was whatever. It was in their interest to do it, so they did it.
That's right, and and that just shows so much. You set down something and said, "This is the policy, and this is what we do." Sometimes you gotta be a little more flexible, and certainly doing. And also, just to what Michael had just said, yes, we were the lowest license fee in television for 2 years. So this is season 2. And David, you came in on the summer episodes of season 2. So we're still a very low budget show, and this was one of the few and one of the first that I think the way that David shot it, and Michael, you did have a dual row, and you guys built an incredible set to be the locker room, because I remember we couldn't make that happen it was either locker room or the weight room that couldn't happen where we shot in Valley College.
It was the weight room.
Yeah, the weight room was,
yep.
And because of that, we just had a different look. It was a richer look. It looked like for one episode we looked like a real television show, and of course the Beverly Hills Beach Club, they threw some money in to build the club, and so that had some nice production value too, but that was the exception, not the rule.
Yes. Hey, I want to ask David Lascher, for you coming into the experience, you had already worked on 90210, and they actually sort of built your character, so you get to come back for this. Talk to me about, Michael, do you have to go, or can you hang out with us?
No, I'll listen. I'll let you know when, who knows, maybe I get to meet my dad.
Okay, cool.
I'll hang out. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. So what is your experience like of getting cast initially and then to come back? I mean, Chuck told me, we watched the show the other day, that they were looking for ways to keep your character on the show. So what was your experience like?
Well, I had just done a show for Aaron in Las Vegas called Jack of Hearts. And it was a show, Eric Roth actually wrote it. And when that didn't go any further, Aaron hooked me up with a movie of the week with a woman named Carla Singer. He just made a call and got me the part. And then shortly after, called me in to read for Kyle, which I thought was a very daring episode to write, especially at the time, to play a teenage character who's admitting that he thinks he's gay, and I was excited about it. And like Charlie said, it was relatively new. I was friends with Luke from when I moved to LA, so I saw what was happening with him. I was so excited. But it was relatively new, those summer episodes, but it blew up so quickly. I remember shortly after, they were on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, and it seemed like it happened in a flash. Yeah. And for me, even to date, and, I've done successful shows and movies, there was nothing like that summer. And the amount of people, at least maybe my contemporaries, the amount of recognition that was coming to that show. I've never experienced anything like that.
Not even for Hey Dude?
Hey Dude has a loyal fan base, but
It
no,
did,
I mean,
and we were part of it. I remember, David Lascher from Hey Dude, and Mr. Spelling looked at me like, you watched that? And we did. We loved it. My little daughter, who now is 36, we did watch that together. I also want to just point out when David said the chance to use the word gay in the sentence, we couldn't do that. We had to call your character sexually confused. It was the only way that we could get that past. At this point, I have to, Jock Hughes, a very homophobic network. They told us that right from season 1. Homosexuality is a turnoff. Okay, so we can't do what's going on in the society. We can't touch upon it. How are we going to do this? And Darren and I, put our heads together, and certainly it was interesting to then have you come into this episode and see you with Kelly, just as friends, and have you here. And at one point in the script, which it turns out, I guess I wrote it, that you say, I have a secret, but you meant steroids, but there was something else obviously there.
I want to take a moment, Chuck, because David.
Can I just do one thing? Because I know Michael's time is limited.
Yep.
Michael, I really went back because I forgot what a bully and mean jock you were. And I tried to think, and then I looked at the next one of the other episodes. You're hazing a freshman, and then you're putting money on an illegal gambling thing that's going on. I mean, you're just a bad guy. But so I looked through it. How did we break the cycle? And it's in the episode Perfectly Perfect, which is Kelly's 18th birthday, and where she passes out in the bathroom, and you look very nervous, and you sit down next to Brenda, and you say, I've wanted to ask you this for 2 years, and you can't even ask her, do you want to dance? All you could say was dance. And you were so endearing that was the moment that you shifted on to the other side. It was quite, because I don't know how we got you to rehabilitated you, but we did.
Here we go.
I was horribly misunderstood.
Well, you were on steroids, evidently. That's
what he said. You were on steroids, and you never stopped until you did. Yeah.
Before we move forward, I want for David Lascher. There's a super fan that was really wanting to talk to you, so I'm going to bring her on here. This is Kristen McIsaac. She is obsessed with you. She even did this. I don't know what this is, but she put herself next to you in something. So there's
dude.
Hey, dude.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Kristen.
How are you?
So we're all about allowing our super fans to have their moments with you all. So, Kristen, David, Kristen, the show is now yours, Kristen.
I am so happy to meet you, David. My 90s heart is beating so hard right now. I just wanted to say I loved you off Hey Dude. And then when you turned up on Beverly Hills, it was so awesome. All of us were so excited. And I love you on Blossom. Love, love, love. And I love all the other shows you did, like Clueless and Sabrina and everything else. So I just wanted to say, I'm a huge fan and I love everything you did.
Oh, thank you so much. When I auditioned for Blossom, Mayim Bialik had watched the summer episode, and I'm pretty sure that's why I got that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly. So I know you guys are going to talk about the steroids episode, but that Summer Storm is my favorite episode of the whole series.
Wow.
I love you playing volleyball with Kelly Taylor on the beach and Steve Sanders being so jealous. That episode is perfect. So that's my favorite episode.
Do you have a question for David? You have a moment here with David. What is it you always wanted to know?
Well, ever since I saw him or heard him on the Girls podcast, I was just wondering, you said you met Luke beforehand. Where did you meet him? Do you mind talking about that?
No.
How do you know him beforehand?
He was very close with my roommate, who I moved to LA with from NYU, and he was just part of my group of friends right when I moved here. And he was, such a good guy. And I remember, driving down PCH to head to the set for the first day, and I was really nervous. And, I pull on, they show me to my trailer, and I just hear Luke going, "Where's Lascher?" And just ran over, hugged me, introed me to everybody. And that's just how he was. He rooted for you. He was just really one of the good guys. Really was.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very
Can I just say hi to Michael Cudlitz? Oh my God.
Sure.
I can't believe I'm talking to you too. Holy smokes.
Is there anything
You have such a huge career. And I just have to say, you're always going to be Tony Miller. Brenda,
happy to hear that.
Love it. I will always think of you like that.
Thank you. I'm okay with that. Tony Miller is very near and dear to my heart.
Voted most athletic in the senior poll of the class of '93 of West Beverly High. Yes.
All right, we're going to say goodbye to Kristen. Anything else you want to say to David, or did you get it all through?
Oh my God, yeah, love you. Oh my God, I don't even know what to say. I'm so excited. Okay,
I love you.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too. Bye, guys.
All right, bye.
So, David, you studied at Tisch?
No, I got into Tisch and deferred for a few years. I moved to LA. I think I was doing Hey Dude, and right when that finished, I moved to LA, and I never ended up going back to Tisch.
All right, let's talk about a couple things with David Carson now. So you had directed the other episode first, the Twins, the Trustees.
No, that was second.
No, this is the first one.
This was the first episode that you directed of 90210. Sorry, I shifted the orders of events because that's how we did it on the podcast. So tell me about getting into the world of directing this episode, and what did you think of the material and the actors and everything that was in? You get the script. What are your thoughts?
Well, Chuck and I knew each other from Northern Exposure, right, Chuck?
Yes, we did.
And I think I directed one of the episodes that you wrote there, or something like that.
Yes, probably the one that my name. I wrote 3, and my name's only on 1, so it was probably the 2 other ones my name wasn't on. But there was Rosen World in there. Yes,
right. But in any case, we knew each other before from Northern Exposure. And then Chuck asked me to come and work on 90210. So that basically is how it happened.
That's right. And we had a lot of crossover with Northern Exposure and vice versa. We sent them Dan Attias to work there, and David. The original editing crew we had, 2 out of 3 of them were Northern Exposure editors who did the first 5 or 6 and then had to go back to do their day job. And I remember I wanted them to come back for year 2. And the post-production department, the one editor we had all the time, a wonderful editor named Michael Anderson, basically said, "We got to get our own culture here. You can't keep briefing these people from the last." So we kind of changed that pipeline.
Yeah. But so for you, David Carson, getting the script and all that stuff, and what were your thoughts?
Well, 90210 was not really on my horizon as something that I wanted to direct, to be quite honest, and or where I saw I was going. But because it came from Chuck and we knew each other, I read the script and I was really, really taken with it. I was taken with it with the way that he dealt with. I was taken with the way you, Chuck, dealt with the social problems that came up in the script. And what I was really interested in was the way they did not stay in a high school. They resonated into the society with other things, such as the gay thing that you talked about, such as the, using drugs enhance performance and to do other things which everybody thought was sort of, okay, that's pretty innocent. That's not, we're not shooting heroin, and all those kinds of things, which were deep problems within the society, which bounded outside the group of people who were in a high school. And it was similar to me. And if you get this kind of parallel, it was similar to me to working on Star Trek, The Next Generation, which I'd done quite a lot of, because in that show you could deal with problems that are to do with our society and talk about them and actually put a point of view forward and have something meaningful to say without treading on everybody's feet, because what happened there happened in the 24th century. So we're like looking back at our civilization through those particular eyes, and there a Klingon can refuse to provide blood to a Romulan because he's the wrong colored skin in that age, and that deals with other things that are close to us in our society. And that's what I really liked about, and was, I think, surprised about your script, Chuck. It was the breadth to which it could be taken and what one could actually do with it. And out of that came the style with which we decided to do the episode, although it did run contra to the way Aaron Spelling's shows went. And in fact, I had a conversation with him where he told me that it had done so, but he wasn't upset by it, where we could actually make the speed of the school be almost the same as being out in society with the same kind of speed, and using the camera to help us do that, bringing in steady cams and things on top of the handheld cameras, which made the atmosphere of the episode, I think, sort of different from many other things that were being done on TV that day. It was very, you didn't get to shoot with a steady cam and all of that kind of thing and keep that incredible pace going on many shows, because they're designed to be in lawyers' offices or sitting down or whatever. This one was written in a way that you couldn't, in fact, do it in the old-fashioned Spelling way, because there weren't. Chuck didn't write. You didn't write the thing about this is a two-shot. Here's the thing: they sit on the edge of the field. They do this. They're always moving. They're always going somewhere. They're doing stuff. Running there. So that it was natural for me to jump onto it. And so when I read the script, I thought I'd like to do this and work with Chuck again. So hopefully,
thankfully you came aboard. I do want to say that although Aaron, we really took Aaron into the 90s and in a whole different shooting style. It may not have been what he wanted, but he gave me pretty much and the production team a lot of flexibility. And I think one of the big things, David, that we got him to shift, and it took a while, but he finally did it. Mr. Spelling, everything was a establishing shot. So you'd have to see the house or the school, and then you cut in. And we finally said in like about this time, in third season, Aaron, they know where they are. They're not going to get lost. You got to trust I'm telling him to trust the audience.
Right.
But I noticed in some of the shows that he did after that, I haven't seen too many Charmed, but I did see one or two, and there were no establishing shots. So we did have an influence there. So.
For David, I was just going to say, in the conversation that I remember having with him on the athletics field, one time when we just happened to be saying, and he said, "So yes, so this is like the MTV kind of episodic show now. This is a different kind of style. We must see what effect it has on the rest of the thing." And I do remember us mentioning establishing shots, and my telling him that I didn't like establishing shots.
He came to the field at Valley Junior College?
Yes.
He drove in with his limo? Wow.
I think so. That's how I remember meeting him and talking to him.
Well, then he was there. Absolutely. That was the MTV thing, he did have a bug on that one, because in the pilot, they sold him on, we're going to shoot it in an MTV style. And, David and Michael, you guys have only seen the 90-minute version of the pilot. The 2-hour version of the pilot had all of these montages and MTV stuff. And the first thing he said, "What do you think of those?" And I said, and he liked this. I said, "They're all going, Aaron." Because they were good, and he was happy to hear that, because the way that he accepted it was, we're going to do it MTV style. You don't know, MTV is where it's at. And one of the things that I realized that if we pretty much did a standard conventional television show, then I could do any social issue I wanted. Because that was more important to him than it looked like Family or Lou Grant, Oliver Shalom to Ed Asner. All of it, and so that was, we really did have an influence on him, and this was one of the episodes, as you say. I mean, he came out there because I know that our line producer and friend Paul Wagner was really worried about everything. I never saw him more worried about an episode than this one. I don't know why. Maybe he was shooting steroids. He was I don't know.
Well, for the actors, for David and Michael, this is an issue-oriented thing. The steroids thing. I mean, I guess it's still prevalent in schools. I don't know. It was a big deal at that time. David, what did you think? David Lascher, what did you think of the script and getting into this? I mean, you've obviously done something very heavy on the show beforehand, so you're getting a lot of complex, really interesting things to do. Yeah,
that's exciting as an actor. I mean, I did think, okay, so he still might be gay, but now he's using steroids. We're gonna handle a lot of issues with this character, but I mean that.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of gay men who were hitting the gym were shooting up. I mean, they were, just like disco came out of gay culture, so did steroids. In some ways, it also came out of the big football players, because in the NFL in the 60s and 70s, like Lyle Alzado of the Raiders, who actually was already dead in from brain cancer from steroids when we filmed this.
Yeah, and then you had Lance Armstrong and all the HGH stuff. I mean, it became really prevalent. But I was so happy to have serious material on a show that was also that popular, because that's very rare, Well,
I told Pete that this show really got in what passed as social media then, which was Prodigy. They clearly have run out of ideas. Why would they do this? This one got a lot of. This was the beginning of the period of time, and all of us know this in our warped culture that we live in. We build up stars and build up something, and high achievement, and then the next years are spent tearing it down. Yeah. And this was the period of time of our transition out of oh boy, we love the summer episodes, to the ushering in the world of I Hate Brenda, which had nothing to really, maybe a little bit to do with Shannon, but it really had to do with our TV show and knocking the fact that we were dealing with social issues and taking a kind of a liberal bent to everything.
Michael, what about for you, getting the script, and what did listen, you're doing crew work and you get something pretty heavy too, no? Michael?
I think he may have
did we lose Michael?
I think he may have, been in the loading zone.
They
used to, you're parked in a loading zone. No parking. It was one of the identifying parts of going to LAX.
I want to go back to something David Lascher said before about them being on Rolling Stone and all of that. What was that experience like for you as an actor? Is that a very intimidating thing to walk into, that these people are super famous? And how did I know you're a guest star, so you're there for a limited time. You're not there as often as they are, but what was that like to see what was happening to them?
It was like kind of magical, because I met them all that summer and became friends. Jenny and I had mutual friends, so we were hanging out, and and Tori and I became friends, and so to watch that happen was, I don't know, it was incredible. And then to see the recognition of how many people were watching the show, it just kind of blew my mind, because you go and you do your work, and you're not aware. I mean, it was a lesson for me moving forward that whatever we do on that little soundstage, it goes out to the entire world. And when you're doing it, everyone's just a real person, showing up, doing their job, and then they get glorified like this, and people appreciate the work so much that it really was it was a lesson that what we do in our jobs is sometimes really magical.
Absolutely. And working alongside the guys, you have a lot of great stuff with Jason and Ian in this. What was it like working with Jason on some of this? Jason is Brandon is interesting in this episode because he is the reporter, right? Like there's different facets of Brandon, and he's really the reporter in this story, and he's conflicted and all that stuff. So there's some really good character stuff happening with him. But so what was Jason like at that time to work with as an actor, I guess?
Oh, he's always been a generous person and a generous actor. I guess his character was sort of the moral compass a lot of the time. And I mean, him and Luke were just so freaking cool. I mean, with their sideburns and their hair, just, it was like working with Elvis,
Right.
Super cool, but like also very down to earth, they were friends, they were supportive and generous. But at the time they were, as big a star as anybody.
Yeah, there were no camps. There was not the Luke camp and the Jason camp. It was just the guys.
The 90210 show camp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And they were the leaders. Yeah, no
and Ian too?
Ian was really funny. I mean, he was always, I just remember him always cracking people up. And he played such a jerk, and it's so far from who he is. But he played it really well.
And I could really relate to that notion of I just want a letter, because, I didn't letter to my junior year. And, everybody else the good athletes are walking around in their freshman and sophomore years with the letters. And I didn't get to play baseball enough to earn a letter until my junior year. So I really related to him, feeling that.
From Michael, can you hear us now, Michael? Are you back?
I'm back.
I was asking earlier, you went from the crew to this role, but it's a pretty heavy role. It's a big topic, the steroid thing. So what did you think of the script? And how did you, and I'm going to ask you this too, David Lascher, about, plotting around or developing the character. How did you find Tony Miller in such an early part of this? And what did you think of the script?
Well, I love the script. I was, and we had talked about this, I think, last time I was on the show. Early on, and not to say that later on I didn't, early on, I loved the stuff we were doing with the show. I thought it was so important. Just all these different topics that they were biting off of, and attempting to give a voice to, not necessarily solve, but give a voice to, let kids know that they weren't alone, which I think we realize now is so important. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I think everybody probably knew it was important as well, but didn't think it was something that people wanted to listen to or watch on television, at least the people who were producing it at the time. So I always go out of my way to mention this about, Chuck and his team, how important the television we were doing at the time was, deeply important. And, I don't know if as an actor, when you're approaching something, if you think of the importance of it, I think it's probably good not to. I think it's important to be aware of how it fits into society, how the bigger picture plays. But generally speaking, you want to be true to the characters, and you want to be in the moment. You want to play those scenes as they're written. And in a show like 90210 is, and in a lot of television shows, as a guest when you come in, you have a job. And your job is to, in a lot of ways, trigger, in whatever way that trigger is. To trigger your main cast into an emotional response and to form a point of view, and they're the ones who get to discuss what is really going on, or have discussions about it, and then the audience gets to come to to leap to a conclusion or a judgment or some sort of resolve. But in the middle of it, as a guest, typically you're in the conflict. You are the conflict. So that stuff is almost easier to play. And the truer you are to it, so far as the circumstances, the more you create a jumping point or a springboard for your main cast to react to. So for me, it was just great because every scene was freaking conflict. The scenes are all extremes. Everyone's extremely happy and joking around, and then it goes violent very quickly. And to be able to sort of touch on that was it's just exciting as an actor, and to do it that early in my career was fun, because usually up until that point I was really just hitting people, not talking to them and then hitting them.
Yeah, well, when you get that line, when you say that line, you're a dead man, Sanders. There is just natural menace. You're going to get yours. It was right out of On the Waterfront. It wasn't overplayed. It just was there. And I also, speaking of lines, back to David, I love that they, in some way, we said, oh yeah, you were on the football team and you were the short, fast receiver that is always on playing flanker and slot, and that you guys really were the athletes. You really were the jocks. And sitting around, even a third season episode we did, Home and Away, about the football team, you guys were the recognizable faces of the football team, in that game. So it was, and Michael, thank you for that thing about the issues. One of the things, though, and I know David Carson probably remembers this quote because it's around Samuel Goldwyn, when given a script that was the studio mogul was given a script and that had issue oriented. And he said, if you want to send a message, go call Western Union. And so we didn't try to the messages were embedded in the action rather than, and sometimes we would do a PSA. If we did one thing that was a message over and over again, it was giving approval that it was okay to go to a therapist. It was okay to talk to somebody about stuff.
Yes.
That was probably our message. If we had one, that was it.
But I also think
diversity and tolerance were allowed. I wish that message would resonate a little more in 2021, but that was also what we were promulgating.
I think too, what's great about the messaging in 90210 is it was never heavy-handed or force-fed to the kids. It was through, like Michael sort of said, like through the course of the actions in the story, you can pick something up, but it was never like, I don't want you to do steroids. It was not like that. It didn't come across that way anyway. For David Carson, I'm curious about directing. David Lascher said that the actors had become superstars, at this point, and what that experience was like directing them during that time period.
Well, they were actors, and I was a director.
Right.
Well, let me put it like this. Before I came to this country, I taught for a long time at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. My whole business as a director is more to do with the performance, actually, than it is to do with cameras and stuff like that. What I generally feel is that if you get a wonderful team around you and they can all do their jobs much better than you can, and for many years I worked with John Alonso, who's one of the great cinematographers, then all you need to worry about basically is the acting, and together we should get a great performance out of things. And I've also worked with some very, very difficult actors whose names shall be nameless. But
Rob Morrow.
but you might have. Well, I didn't quite hear that. What was that one?
Rob Morrow.
Yes, but
name just came to me.
Yes,
I don't know
absolutely.
why.
No, I can't think why either, Chuck, or his co-pilot Janine Turner. But
Yeah,
these
exactly.
the actors in this in 90210 were eager to work. They wanted to play the scripts. They wanted to do this. There was no feeling that I had of, oh, we're big TV stars and this is what we do and that's what we do, because basically the challenge was always to play the character and find those moments and deal with those moments and the relationships that was going on. And I was somebody who was watching that and being very careful about it. So maybe we got on quite well together. I have the feeling that we got on very well together.
Well,
So-
my co-writer in this, Jonathan Roberts, who went on to write The Lion King, had a really nice sense of humor. And so all of that plot line with Brenda and driving, which we went back to, she wasn't a good driver. We established that. He put that all together. Those were his lines, his things, and the being a victim of a scam like that. So that was what we did to lighten up such a heavy episode like this one, where there really is threats of violence and menace, up and down it.
Yes. And then I was going to ask David, to follow up on your point, was there anything that you remember specifically about the episode, getting a little something different out of a scene or from the actors? Was there anything like that happening here?
No, I don't. There was nothing that had to be worked on that they didn't know about, because they lent themselves entirely to the subject that was there. David's character, particularly with the two elements of being the guy who told on everybody else and the guy who was discovering his own sexuality at the time. The cast was such a good cast at wanting to do great work that. And also being entirely, it seemed, as in my memory, but Michael and David can correct me, being entirely unselfish about what they were doing. So it was a group thing. And in fact, when I went back and looked at this particular episode, I was struck by how we got the camera and the actors to work together so well, and how those group scenes work incredibly well. Which normally you would pepper them with close-ups and this and that. But we allowed them just to play inside the lens, and you can see how the interaction is really, really fabulously creative for every kind of a situation. So
well,
whether it was just
end,
sorry,
David, I just want to say, to that end, we noticed when we did the watch along that we always did walking down the hallway, and then the camera, and it was one of the, I didn't really like telling a director how to direct on a page, but we did, the camera pans and finds the other people walking the other way in the hallway, and we did that a lot. We never did a trifecta, 1-way, 2-way, 3-way. You got 3 different scenes and subplots into one shot. And
I loved it.
It really stood out. I just want you to know that again.
Do you remember what he's talking about?
Great. Yes.
Yeah. Well, he just saw it. In the car.
Now I've seen it. This was the hallway scene, which started out one way and went back the other way and got interrupted in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. But again, the other thing is that it's driven. This kind of drama is driven also by the writing, because I think Paul did get a little nervous about some of the time we were taking on doing things. And I remember when the big beat up scene came at the end, we were right at the end of a day, and the Steadicam operator we were quickly panning from one place to the other in order to finish the thing. But if you had done it in a different way, you would have run out of time, because the script and the actors and everything were moving. It was a very, very volatile thing to try to capture. And
I also noticed we must have put a lot. We went over budget on the category of extras on this one. I don't think I've ever seen more extras between unless we got the Valley Junior College track team to come out and just run in the background. there are a lot of people in both on the track team, in the hallways. Very unusual. Peach Pit, very unusual for us.
Well, that was great.
for David Lascher, I'm curious about developing the character of Kyle as well. I asked Michael about that and finding him. I mean, I don't know. Is it hard to, like, you're going to do something that you're going to be on for a while? You can sort of have some time to build things, right? But you're a guest star. What is your process like in finding Kyle?
Well, it's so much easier when the writing is organic and well done. So, like with Kyle, I would think about the pressure to succeed, the pressure, the ideas of doing the right thing, things that a teenager has to struggle with. Exceed. You want to exceed. You want to, do well at sports and academically. You want to fit in, but shouldn't you also do the right thing? And those things all together make a character that's, three-dimensional and interesting and conflicted. And thankfully there are characters like Brandon that help him lead the right way, and there are characters like Michael's character who present obstacles, and I think just the writing was so good that it just came naturally, all these different conflicts within the characters.
You know what I'm curious about? I've heard now Michael and David have both talked about the development of characters. One of the things that it leaves me flat, and I don't know how you guys do it, is when you do procedurals, and it's just the facts, man. It's like an old, for David Carson and I, it sounds like old dragnets, just the facts, this and this and this, and the way that the CSI and the way they talk to each other. Where do you, if you're a guest star, I mean, I know that when you did Southland, Michael, you were the lead, so you had the character. But people coming on a cop show like that must be really, really hard, because the writing doesn't give you any indication what anybody's thinking at the time. Am I right or wrong about this?
I don't know, and David could probably support me or not on this. I often think that the guests are the most well-written characters, because the audience, look, when you're a regular on a show, your work becomes in some ways, not always, in some ways, so easy by year 2 and 3, because the audience is with you. They don't even have to understand. They think if they don't understand, it's their fault because they love you already. The heavy lifting comes from the guests, and the heavy thought comes from the writers who are writing the guests, typically. So I find that it was always, the most amazing work is going on off camera while David Caruso is staring at you. The guests are going through all the pain, all the conflict, all the danger. And, and our leads and our heroes are put in, minor forms of jeopardy. But the heavy lifting typically is to the guest. And because of that heavy lifting, I think that the heavy writing and the more, a tremendous amount of thought goes into that in most cases.
David Lascher, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, shows that I've done for 3 or 4 years, it's the guest stars and the directors, and sometimes the writers that keep breathing the life into it. Whereas, we used to shoot 22 episodes a year, and when you're getting to the end of season 5, you start to look at your, when is my out? What's my call time? And I remember working with David, and when I was doing Blossom, Henry Winkler came on to direct some, and this was, season 5 or 6, and we were in the mindset that I was just describing, and Henry acted as if he was at the British Royal Academy, like he was directing Shakespeare. And he would call me at night with a comedic idea. And I'll never forget, the lesson I learned was the most talented, the most successful people in this business never take it for granted. If you're going to show up, you show up 100% or don't do it. And as an actor on a successful show, I've seen the complacency, and I've seen the directors and the guest stars come in and just breathe that life into it.
Well, that's very interesting. Yeah, I know in the writing world in network television at that time, the one advice I got from a TV executive, I kept in every TV movie I did, every pilot I did, and certainly in 90210, it's reflected when he said, the biggest mistake writers in television make is they write down to their audience. Don't write down to your audience, write up. And you know, keep and find creative ways to do things. And you know, it's good advice.
Really enjoying this conversation. I do want to mention there's one other thing that happens in this episode. The Brenda's fender bender and the whole issue with the car. Chuck, do you want to talk about that? And
I did a little bit with Jonathan Roberts.
Before you guys get into that, I'm gonna sign off. I love you guys.
Michael, so great
got
to
my
see
dad.
you, brother.
all right,
And
my man.
I'm so glad I got to see the two Davids. And hopefully I will see you guys soon.
Go ahead, Chuck, on the Brenda.
Well, it was the lighter stuff, you know, and how do you make that, you know, feel, you know, like, oh, this is funny, and yet you're not doing a punchline.
Right.
You know, and that was always my kind of comedy that I like to do, was character comedy. I know, David, a lot of the shows that you're involved with, some of your credits, Sabrina, Clueless, Blossom. I mean, you got that young Punim, so you played a young guy a lot, and yet you did also a lot of comedy. So is the things that David Carson and Michael Cudlitz were talking about relative to dramaturgy, does that factor into comedic work too?
I think comedy and drama are very similar. They both have to be grounded in human emotion. I could fall off a horse on Hey Dude, or do something ridiculous on Sabrina, but for my character, it had to be 100% drama. Falling off a horse isn't funny to the guy that's falling off.
Right.
So I think they go hand in hand. And to be honest, not to put down dramatic actors, but I think a fine comedic actor could step into a dramatic role with no problem. And I don't know, vice versa, might take a little more work in getting used to.
Hello, Jim Carrey. Hello.
How about for David Carson in terms of directing it? The Brenda scenes versus the heavy stuff in the episode.
Well, I think the point that David makes is very good. I mean, I would write on the back of that and say that the secret to the Brenda scenes, it seems to me, is, of course, the way that they're written, but also that although they are contrastingly somewhat lighter than the real stuff, the heavy duty stuff that's happening in the gyms and with the athletes, it's still a serious problem. She has a really serious problem. And the great thing about this comedic part of the script is that, Chuck, you treat it like a real serious problem. It's not sort of some silly thing to Brenda. This is really serious. And then to her dad, so that in the end, the only way you can actually make a sort of a button on it, or the punchline, is to do something, was what I tried to do, which I remembered that there is to put Brenda's face into the diamond of the window at the end as she's watching the naughty girl do her aerobics, which isn't a laugh line, but it's sort of like almost too good to be true to get that kind of shot, if you know what I mean. So it had a visual tinkle on the end of it. But I think it was light. It was really, really well contrasted with the rest of the movie. If you suddenly had a really strange Charlie Chaplin moment in there, it wouldn't have worked, I don't think, or a few pratfalls and stuff like that. But even mentioning Charlie Chaplin, that's the way everything he does is based on reality.
Of course,
That's
yes.
absolutely real. And that's what you did in this script, Chuck. And this is my view anyway.
Really good stuff. I think we've covered this episode really great. For David Lascher, I know Charles and I really want to cover Summer Storm with you and developing Kyle and those initial stuff. So please come back to do that with us at some point. It would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've got some anecdotes to tell you, David, about how the fights. This one was a fight. This one,
Summer Storm.
some episodes weren't a fight. This one was a fight. Yeah.
I remember, Charles, you won some award that you were proud of, but I remember you sending me a notice that episode won an award. You remember that?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
And Pete's always like, "How do you know that? How can you remember?"
I don't. Sometimes I'm like, I
don't remember. To tell
well,
you the truth.
come back. We'll cover Summer Storm. Come back. Everybody think on that. Charles is now going to remember all the awards, right?
I'll look for it.
All right, so we're going to say goodbye to David Lascher. Thank you, man,
Thank you,
for coming on.
David.
Please come back and join us, man. It was a lot of fun.
I would love to. So great to